Hello. So my internet is down, so the audio might be kind of crappy. Sorry, but I'm here, and I'm going to be here for at least 30 minutes. How's everybody doing on Sunday? Um, Today, I really didn't have anything to talk about. I saw on Twitter somebody was gushing over watching Cowboy Bebop for the first time, and I always say that everybody gets lost in a lot of the cool elements of Cowboy Bebop because Bebop is very cool. Um, the issue is I think people forget so much about the heart, not just of bebop, but of storytelling in general. Sometimes people get so caught up in wanting their characters to be tough, and they want the characters to be cool, they want the characters to be super heroic, that they forget that the characters need to have a heart. You know, they need to have something that they care about. They need to have people that they care about, stuff that they care about. And some of the some of the finest material of Cowboy Bebop is how emotionally damaged all the characters are and how they deal with that emotional damage and you know um the heart of all of these characters. Heartbreak is at the center of every character in Cowboy Bebop, every main character. Faye is betrayed by a guy who wakes her up from a coma, lies to her about everything, lies about who he is. Jet is betrayed by his partner. Spike is betrayed by Julia, and 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 Ed, she can't find her dad. Her dad, left her at an orphanage and then disappeared, forever, never to be seen again. And so she goes on this trip to go and find him. And you get this idea that heart is a very important element in Cowboy Bebop, but it's underneath all of the cool. There's so much cool in Cowboy Bebop. There's so much cool stuff going on that you forget about the heart. And the heart is there. The heart is the key. And the heart is the key to all stories. Not cool action, not cool dialogue, but having heart. Your characters have to be emotionally damaged in some way. Something has to be missing, something that they're searching for. Every member of Cowboy Bebop, in some way or another, is looking for a family. The only one who openly says it is Ed, you know, but the rest of them are basically looking for some kind of family relationship because they don't have it. It's four individuals living on a ship, barely interacting with one another in any meaningful way. So I appreciate everybody who jumps into Cowboy Bebop, especially since it's been around for so long. But the difference between like Cowboy Bebop and Lupin the Third is the cool fact. Is not just the cool factor, but the heart. Lupin seems to lean a lot more into the comedic elements, while Cowboy Bebop has the comedic elements. It doesn't have Lupin doesn't have the heart of Cowboy Bebop. It just Lupin as a character is just cool. He's not emotionally damaged in any way. Um, Even though he kind of plays with that, but it's not really who he is or what he is. And a lot of it's what made Samurai Champloo so good as well. Samurai Champloo for a lot of people is up there with Cowboy Bebop in terms of anime that they really enjoyed. It's not that long, but everybody in Samurai Champloo is also emotionally damaged, and the entire storyline is based off of Fu's emotional damage, and how she's trying to force these two guys who essentially want to fight each other into being her bodyguards and into being friends so that she can have some semblance of a family or have something going for her. And the end of Samurai Champloo is very interesting in terms of how they just go their own way. Jenks says Lupin is the Japanese James Bond. He's not as nearly as harsh as James Bond. He's not as James Bond is a little bit more, a little ice cold. Lupin is also a simp, so it's a little bit different. I can see how you can say he's probably based off of James Bond, being a master of disguise and going on these daring heists and all this kind of stuff. But Lupin is a little bit different than James Bond. But I can see where a lot of it might come from. Double O Nine. I mean, yeah, 009 Cyborg. I saw that series. Um, there is a lot of heart in that series too. I'm struggling to remember it, but I think there's two different versions of that anime, isn't it? There's like an '80s version, and then there's the version that was on Adult Swim, not Adult Swim, Toonami. Um, but I don't remember that. I know each cyborg had their own like superpowers and stuff, but I don't remember like the plot of the series. I just remember they had very big noses and wide eyes, and they all wore the same jumpsuit. But usually, what attracts me to a story, if is what is the character missing? What is the character looking for? What does the character want? If the character just wants revenge, well, that can be boring. The character just wants revenge for something. That can be kind of boring. But if the character wants some kind of MacGuffin, that can be kind of boring. You have to start looking for other elements, you know. And sometimes a show or anime or something is insufferably cool, and that's really all it needs to be. There doesn't need to be that second gear or that second level to it. It could just be very, very cool. And Dragon Ball is like that, where there's heart in Dragon Ball, but there's not a lot. You know, um, some of the elements from the filler of Dragon Ball Z actually made the show deeper than you know it was otherwise. you know, uh, Building character relationships. Characters having other friend groups, like specifically the Marin being a part of Krillin's story in Dragon Ball Z in the orange box set, the original run of Dragon Ball. It set it up so that, Krillin is a lovelorn human who, he's not a kid. He's just like Yamcha and Goku and all these guys. He wants to have a relationship too. And he tries with this girl who's kind of out of his league a little bit. And I'll never forget that episode where he swims under the sea in order to get that giant pearl from Aaron. And you get the idea, like, man, Krillin is just a dude, Like, he might be a badass human super fighter or whatever, but all in all, he's just a dude. And it's it's so humanizing, and it makes the character so much cooler that you know that he's struggling with something metaphysical, something that he sees all his. Well, Tien is a monk, and Piccolo is asexual because Nameks can reproduce on their own, and they're all male. So you don't have to worry about Piccolo. Tien is essentially a monk, and everybody else has some type of relationship. Yamcha was at one point with Bulma, and then that didn't work out. Goku has Chi Chi, Vegeta has Bulma later on, and it's just Krillin. It's just him. Well, him and Yajirobe. Yajirobe doesn't have any girlfriends, but he's a human being, and he gets older. And then you asked when you take into account the fact that Krillin died in the original Dragon Ball and was brought back, you see that he got killed at a point without having anything more to his life than just being a martial artist, you know? And having that sort of heart in the story is really meaningful. It's very important, I think, to storytelling. And some people think that, the romance or the dramatic elements are they're a waste of time. Just get to the cool fight scenes and the explosions and everything. But that's what Bebop did best. Is Bebop didn't beat you over the head with the drama. There's stretches of episodes where you get like heavy, heavy drama, and then they'll eat something and get sick and float around through space, or they'll be broke and have to go and catch some criminal or something like that. So you'll go and get your explosions and all that kind of stuff, but they're not giving away all the dramatic elements. They slowly but surely build upon that. you know, and I understand it. I wish people would, when writing or when thinking, they would consider, you know, the emotional damage that you want to put your characters through, preferably before the story begins. Um, and at some point, or if you're going to put it during the story, let's make it meaningful. You know, I wrote a story once. I may put it out there, I may not, but it was a story of an undercover, guy who used to be an undercover police officer. He gets jumped in a parking lot. Him and his wife get shot, and he goes through like the early part of the story, essentially guilt ridden, feeling like his undercover work has come back to haunt him, and that's the emotional element of it. Is he did all of this stuff before he met her, and when karma came around for these people to get their revenge, it just so happened that his wife was there, and she gets killed and he survives. And I use that as the emotional drama throughout the story. And I liked doing that. And I felt like it was very important. I've also written stories where characters, of course, they do a lot with the dead parents, and that's a traditional superhero thing. So some of the first stuff I wrote was characters with dead parents, know. But you think about things that are missing. Like one of the most recent stories I wrote is basically created a universe. I don't want to get too far into it, but in this universe there are immortals, characters that live forever. And in this story, there is a character who is immortal who believes her father is still alive, even though her father is mortal, and that he is being kept alive through black magic. And she walks the world looking for him. And instead of writing that, I just got to the part where she found him, because it was supposed to be a short story. And I basically just said, okay, let's not go through we're going to write a 800-page tome where she goes from here to here, here to here, here to here, looking for him. I will fill all that in later. And I still think it was one of the better stories that I wrote because I didn't hem and haw over it and start from the very beginning and whisk all the way through it. But it still had a tremendous heart line through it, heartbeat, where she's very, very old, but she remembers her dad. And now she believes that her father is being kept alive, basically being tortured by this black magic. And I thought that was something that was fairly good in terms of, and I haven't written anything in over 6 months probably. Um, I haven't written anything since January at least. Um, so I've written something else um, where I wanted to write like a Conan the Barbarian kind of character, but I wanted to write something that was a little bit different. So I think I may have actually uploaded part of this story where this guy is basically just looking for a place to call home. He's a nomad who wanders the world, and he's offered a position that he has to go through this dangerous ritual or this dangerous trial. And if he completes it, you know, the king of this land will give him, a plot of land for himself where he can actually sit down and relax and start building a family and all this sort of stuff. Of course, it's not that easy, but and it's also, in order to keep the stories going, to have more stories, I added a little bit more to it. But that was what I felt was a good heartbeat for the story. I wrote another one that was basically about a voodoo priestess who inherits her grandmother's power. And I think I actually posted the first chapter of this. If I didn't, sorry. But I remember posting, I think, the first chapter, the first couple of pages at least. And it was about her rebuilding the relationship between herself and her grandmother. because it was somebody that she barely knew. And through magic, they actually come to know each other. You know, it's beyond the grave too. Like it's some kind of and I got that because I actually read, and I kind of came up with this idea that if you didn't really know your grandma and you inherited something from her, there would be a piece of her living inside of you within your bloodstream, right? So it would be something that would be in the blood that will walk her through her journey as a voodoo priestess. And then it would allow them to bond with each other, for the young woman to learn more about herself, for the old, and to learn about grandma, and also deal with the outside world issues. And once I started really nailing on the what's my heartbeat of the story going to be, what is, my character's emotional flaw, what are they looking for, or even if it's not something that you're looking for, but something they can't get away from. Destiny is a good one for most people. They come up with destiny, but sometimes destiny isn't good because it comes across as, how could your destiny be attached to something you didn't know about prior? You know, um, at the same time, though, if it's something that was preordained, then you have a world to build. Who preordained it? What is the system? What is the enemy? Yada yada yada. So I just thought about that upon reading this guy gushing about Cowboy Bebop. And I say, like, this is one of the reasons why fighting games have a hard time being adapted, is because people have a difficult time with like 10, 15, 20 characters finding the heartbeat of a video game, you know. When it comes to Street Fighter, like the early part of the Street Fighter usually was Chun-Li and Bison, and that heartbeat being that Chun-Li wants revenge for the death of her father. And that works, but it works for Chun-Li. It doesn't explain why Ken is there or why Ryu is there. And then, in the animated movie, they put Guile in there. Of course, Guile has Charlie, who was killed by Shadow Law, and those two basically work together to combat them, and that works. It can work. Um, but Street Fighter notoriously has had a difficult time being adapted because people can't find the heartbeat of it. It's too many different characters. Um, Now, in some of the other ones, they've chosen to focus on the relationship between Ryu and Ken, Ryu, Ken, and Akuma, Goken, etc. And they found, like, okay, we can build off that. I think it was I was about to say Dragon Ball. Street Fighter Alpha, the animated movie. I think it was mostly about Ken, Ryu, Goken, and Akuma. That was the heartbeat. And you had the kid that was in there that was saying that, Ken Masters was his, not Ken, but Ryu was his big brother, if I remember correctly. I haven't seen it in a long time. And they, of course, threw that character in there because they knew this damn movie needed a heartbeat. Um, Fatal Fury does have a heartbeat with with Terry and Andy and Geese Howard, but they always have a difficult time. Those are a little bit those are a little bit better. The Fatal Fury movies, because of that heartbeat, because it's a clear cut hero and a clear cut villain. You don't really focus too much on the other characters. Mortal Kombat is a big problem because, as much as people want to focus on the tournament, the tournament is just a way for people to act out their own agendas. There really is no main character to Mortal Kombat, like and so in the most recent movie, they chose to do Scorpion, and he would be the heartbeat of the story, would be the Scorpion versus the Lin Kuei. And that works to a degree, um, because everybody loves Scorpion. But Mortal Kombat was one of those things that was just unrepentantly cool, and they didn't overthink it in terms of characters and character motivations. It was all about ripping people's heads off and, you know knocking them into spikes. So it was interesting, you know. AJ3 says, "Have I seen the Tekken movies?" I probably have. I played the video games. I know that Tekken is mostly about the family. Um, but I'm not as up on Tekken as I am like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. WG Phil said they tried making a 2021 a career mode with a creator wrestler. They've been trying that for a long time, and it's like it's hard because you have to create a story. You know, what is the story? And the story's gonna be generic. I want to be a WWE superstar. I want to be WWE champion. Eh, eh. You got to dig a little bit. You got to dig a little bit deeper. What about mysteries? Well, mysteries can mysteries still have to have heart. You know, but mystery is going to be a lot about drama. It's going to be a lot about who done it. Twists matter a lot in mysteries. Um, when you have a who done it, you got to have. I think I did this before, right? I talked about this. You got to have suspicious characters. You got to have motives, and then you got to have who could it be, and why would it make sense to be that person? And I've talked about this, I think, in context to the Who Attacked Trick Williams thing, but you can also apply it to Who is the Devil in AEW. Um, because it's a mystery, it's a question, it's episodic. You could build suspicion for different people. You could build motives for different people. So what ends up happening is when you don't create good suspicions or good motives, people just start throwing out random stuff. Like when I started hearing that, oh, Britt Baker could be the devil, I was like, that shit don't even make sense. Like, why would it be Britt Baker? You know, like like why why does it why would that make sense? You know, I don't know, but that's what happens when you don't create something within the body of the mystery. Then people start reaching for people who are not on the roster and people who are on the roster but they're not very utilized or people who have nothing to do with the story and all this kind of stuff. Oh yeah, the Mortal Kombat movie where they had that new guy who was basically like Scorpion's descendant. Oh, that was terrible. He was the worst part of the movie, you know, because everybody wanted to see Scorpion fight Sub-Zero. That was the heartbeat of the movie. Nobody cared about that guy. He was just a means of pushing the the story forward. Nobody cared about him. And That was that was part of the problem. Like they probably would have had a sequel by now if they'd have stuck to the original characters and built a story around Scorpion and Sub Zero's feud. You know, I mean, there are two Sub Zeros. Well, there's more than two. And Mortal Kombat just they did what they did with their with their timeline. But there's at least two Sub Zeros. So you could have had Scorpion come back from the grave and kill one of the Sub Zeros, only for another one to show back up. And that one to sort of get his revenge on Scorpion or something like that. So there's a lot of stuff that you could have done, but I don't know why they chose to go the way they did. It's very weird. But Mortal Kombat is an American property with a lot of Japanese elements, so maybe that's what they were going for here. The Miz is Johnny Cage. It's pretty humorous, but it's true. He would have been great. He basically is that role right now anyway. So when I read manga, that's basically what I'm looking at is what is the heartbeat of the manga? Because the heartbeat of the manga is going to be more important than the MacGuffin, more important than any individual enemy. Is going to be more important than anything. It's going to be what really drives the character forward. And so I'm looking right now at Hell's Paradise. I don't know if you guys have actually watched the anime or not. Um, it's called Jingo Kuaku. It is that's the Japanese name for it. But it's called Hell's Paradise, and you meet Zabimaru the Hollow. Is a highly trained ninja assassin, and When you first meet him, he doesn't really care about living. He kind of wants to die, but his body won't allow him to die. You know, so he kind of reflexively protects himself from being like beheaded or set on fire or whatever. And you're trying to see like, why is this guy who wants to die verbally says he wants to die, but he clings to life so fervently? Why is it? You know, why is it? Why is his actions contradicting his words? And you get later on why that is. And then once he's thrown into this mystical world, this mystical island of dangerous and mutant creatures, the one thing that keeps him going above all else isn't the MacGuffin of finding the sacred water or whatever the fuck it is they want you to look for in that thing, but finding their their completing their mission so he can get pardoned. He doesn't care about that. He just wants to get back to his wife. Like that's his motivation. Above all else, not staying alive, not anything else. He is a guy who just loves his wife. It's that simple. It doesn't take a lot, but it's such a recurring beat, and you see how strongly he feels about it that you can't get away from it. And at every step, that it keeps coming back to him. Now there are some story elements in the manga series. I read the whole series, in which you kind of like, okay, stop. You know, like okay. But at the same time, it's set up as being such a powerful motivator that you can see a guy basically fighting back from the very brink of death, fighting through death. You know, that love is beyond everything, it's beyond anything, you know, and it's it's the groundwork is done, you know. And that's another thing is like you really have to set up what the heart is early so that the characters, especially when they make bad decisions that have to do with the heartbeat of the story, people can justify it, especially when it's a good character. If it's a good guy or a good character, you can justify bad decisions if it doesn't contradict the heartbeat of the story, you know? And people will be like, oh, you know, he wouldn't do something stupid like that. It's like, well, yeah, you know, he kind of would. But there's a lot of stories like Spy Family became very, very popular. Chainsaw Man too. Mostly not because they're doing well, Chainsaw Man has really great art, but it's the story, the heartbeat of the story is Denji just being wants to be a normal kid, you know? And I remember it's put to you in a very crass way, and you have to look beyond that. Like he says like he just wants to touch boobs, just wants to get laid, you know? But then if you actually read like the first chapter and you follow it along, you get that it's more than that. You know, Denji has never had a normal life. He's always been mistreated. He falls in love with the first girl who ever treats him nicely, and she ends up manipulating him. And then you have something that's even stronger as you go through that story, because now you see that he's being manipulated. You see that he's being dogged out. You see that he's being led astray. And it's so meaningful, especially as you go along. And that's what got people really amped up about Chainsaw Man. Not necessarily that it was, you know, the most well written show or that it was the most well drawn manga. It was people understood Denji's story and they went along with it. They was like, oh shit, especially males, especially young men. It's a shonen too, so yeah, it's a shonen. So you can pretty much get it. you know, even though it kind of toes the line a little bit, with some of the more vulgar elements. It's still sort of a shonen. It's not a seinen, that's for sure. It's not mature enough. But it's a coming of age story, you know, and people become attached to that. And Spy Family, is is completely different because everybody in Spy Family is pretty cool, but they're trying very hard to be normal. And then you have oh shit, the what's the oh my god, what's the baby girl name? Uh, I'm sitting here looking right at the manga. I can't remember what her name is, but she wants a family, you know, and the adults are trying to be a normal relationship, a normal family for her, and that is the heartbeat of the story. She pushes the story forward, you know, and that's very interesting, and that's really what gets people attached to things is you gotta have good stories, you gotta have good heart in your story, you gotta have a good heartbeat. Are you going to watch Dragon Ball Daima? Well, of course. Why would I not watch it? Everybody who complaining about it is going to end up watching it. So, I mean, it is what it is. It ain't coming out no time soon. So, we got plenty of time to get over how people feel about it. you, you got like a year to get over it. So, but even did you hear about Kyrie spoiling? She hit the like button on something, maybe by mistake. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway, um, when you look at traditionally American superheroes, the heart factor is also very important. It's also why so many of these characters can't be replaced. The old switcheroo, we can just, get rid of Iron Man and put somebody else there. We could just replace Captain America, move him out the way and move somebody else in. It doesn't work that way. People are not interchangeable. You can make anybody you want Spider-Man, but people are attached to the Spider-Man character for a reason. You know, they're attached to Spider-Man due to Ben Parker, due to Gwen Stacy, Captain Stacy, all the characters that have been lost along the way. The marriage with Mary Jane, you can't replace that stuff. You can't just put somebody else in that suit and then expect them to just accept it. That's why you can't do that. You know, you can't do it with the Punisher either. I see they're trying to do that with the Punisher now. Oh, it's a new Punisher. You're going to give him this, pretty much the same backstory, but it's going to be a completely different guy. And everybody's going to look at it and be like, okay, but there was nothing wrong with the other guy. Like we like Frank. Frank's outlook on life, Frank's approach to the world. It's not the same. You know, Wolverine, despite the fact that Wolverine was such an incredibly cool character, just like it looks cool. The best thing they did with Wolverine is they turned him into a guy who pretty much lives forever, and he, everybody else around him suffers for his behavior. And so that leads to Wolverine having some really great stories in which other people suffer through him not being able to control himself and him not being able to fucking die. You know? So like Old Man Logan is perfect. It's now, of course, you would question some of the stuff they did with some of the characters, but Old Man Logan is fantastic. Wolverine goes berserk and kills all of the X-Men. Whether you think Mysterio should have those kinds of powers or not, he did it, and I'm okay with that. And because Wolverine was so traumatized, he decides to go live in the woods and never use his claws ever again. You know, and it's like he's an older, still immortal brick wall of a Wolverine, but other people suffer for him because Wolverine can heal from anything, but it doesn't mean that his emotions heal. Physically he can heal from anything, but the emotional trauma, he doesn't get over that, you know? And so he has tons and tons and tons of emotional trauma. Like there's hella emotional trauma with Wolverine. Him being a test subject, they covered his bones in adamantium, you know, and forcing him to live in a pickle jar for who knows how long. It changes over time, you know, to him not wanting to be accepted by the X-Men, to eventually coming to accept their friendship, and him falling in love with another guy's girlfriend. You know, like all this sort of emotional trauma that you get with Wolverine makes him such an intriguing character that you can build drama around. You can't just replace that. You can't just kill him off for 4 years and be like, well, we're going to make a new Wolverine. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way. You know, if people thought just a little bit about this stuff, you could clear up a lot of issues. But folks don't think that way, you know? But there's a way to do everything. Let me get that out there. There are ways of, you know, doing something where somebody else can have the same power set or the same name. But if you put somebody in a position where they're going to be the replacement, people are going to look at it like a replacement. And then if you don't write the story correctly, they're definitely going to reject it. And over the last pretty much 10 years now, since at least 2013, they've been trying to replace almost every major Marvel character and DC, and they failed to do so. So instead of replacing them, they decided to change them, turn them into villains, turn them gay, turn them black, you know, whatever they can do, and it's still not working, you know, because they're missing the essential elements. What makes these characters work is in the heart of the characters, not in the cool powers, not in the outfits. It's in the heart of the character. WG Phil says Miles is pretty much the worst thing to happen to comics as a whole. He has no character growth outside of fucking Peter's hand me downs. The thing is, if they would have done Miles Morales in his own universe, I doubt many people would complain about it, and I doubt many people would care. Again, Miguel O'Hara was in the 90s, was the Spider-Man 2099. He had his own universe. Nobody cared. He's the Spider-Man of that universe. Peter is not alive anymore. Okay. In the Ultimate Universe, Peter Parker dies, and then Miles Morales becomes Spider-Man. Okay. But when you have them both in the same universe, it's like, come on, you can't do this. You know, like it doesn't, it was stupid, you know? Miles was based on Danny Glover claiming if Spot, what if Spider-Man was black? Well, yeah, it clearly was coming from a place of I know that Childish Gambino has something to do with it, but I thought he wanted to play Miles in the movie, but I'm in the position now where I say to myself, they what could have been interesting, they screwed it up, and the more they fight against the wave, the worse it gets. You know, if you'd have put Miles in his own universe, it wouldn't have been a problem. All right, it's only a problem because you're trying to forcefully share the spotlight with Peter. It's not going to work. You know, it's just not going to work. You can't have two of the same characters with the same name. You know, it's dumb. You know, like for even for DC Comics where they had two or three different versions of the Flash. You know, it doesn't work. Not where they're there at the same time. You know, you could have Wally, you could have Barry, but you can't have Barry and Wally at the same time. You know, somebody's got to go because they have different. It's an emotional core that is different for both characters. WG Phil says, I don't mind Green Lantern because it's a squadron, but characters like Captain America and Spider Man, there's no need for it. Yeah. And see, Captain America is an interesting one too because Captain America is a franchise owned by the United States government. So anybody can be Captain America as long as they are, um, sanctioned by the American government. The issue with Captain America is it's interesting because, as you know, Steve Rogers is frozen in ice, and Captain America continues. Like there's Captain Americas after Steve Rogers, so you don't fall completely into Green Lantern territory where there could be 1,500 Green Lanterns, but you fall into it where Captain America, a guy is Captain America until he's killed off or retires or something, and then another Captain America takes his place, which is John Walker, and I think I forget the other guy's name is who was Captain America. Um, but generally speaking, that's how it works. So when they decided to make uh, Falcon Captain America, they did so by removing the super soldier serum from Steve Rogers and making him old. Okay, so now Steve Rogers is old. He can't be Captain America anymore. He doesn't have any powers anymore either. So now we have to move the shield along. And that could have worked, believe it or not. If you hadn't been virulently wanting to change every single character at the same time, you might have got away with that. You know? If it was 1998 and they decided to remove the super soldier serum from the blood of Captain America, and now he's an old man, he can't fight anymore. And he gives the shield to a good friend of his. People would have accepted that because, okay, Captain America is black now, but it wouldn't have been that big of a deal because for starters, it'd have been 1998, not 1928. People are not that damn racist in 1998. And second, it would have been just Captain America. But when you change Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and you got rid of all of the X-Men, everybody's like, no, anything that you change on any character, we're getting rid of it. We don't like it. Like there was a time where James Rhodes was Iron Man, and nobody complained. Nobody cared. Rhodey was Iron Man because Tony Stark quit. And then there was also a time that he was Iron Man because Tony Stark was in a wheelchair because he got shot by one of his bitches. But that was an interesting time in the Iron Man books. But the way that you approach the situation and the timing is how you handle it. It's how they handle it, and it's very unfortunate. Bucky Barnes was believed to have been dead too. That's the thing. Like Bucky Barnes was supposedly had died before Steve Rogers got frozen. So it was a new Bucky and a new Cap. I forget who it was after Steve Rogers, but I think John Walker was the Captain America of like the 70s and 80s. And then they brought Steve Rogers back and he became US agent. And then Steve Rogers left to become Nomad. And I think somebody else became Captain America. It was crazy, but yeah, they thought Bucky had died before Captain America died. I mean, before he got frozen or lost or whatever. Yeah, I think he was technically killed in action. Yeah, Iron Fist is a title. It's literally the Guardian, the Kulan. It was interesting how they forcefully changed that too. Like, if you actually read Iron Fist comics, which if you can get through them, some of them are good, but Iron Fist is a mid character, so the stories are not always on the up and up. But he has a literal connection to that world, to Kunlun. He's literally connected to their. I think one of those guys is his uncle. One of these seven masters or whatever the fuck. One of these guys is his uncle. Because I think his father was from there or something, and his parents were on their way there when they were attacked and killed, and he was raised there. So even though they go through all of this, it's whitewashing, martial arts and all this kind of stuff. If you'd have followed the heartbeat of the story, you see that part of the story was that Danny was so different than everybody else. He was mistreated and abused for being the white boy and normal human in this place, you know. But these people they're activists. They're not people who actually read this crap, you know. So you asking for too much. But racism was a part of the Iron Man story, but it wasn't what they think. It was Iron Man as the victim of racism, mostly. Uh, um, but I liked Iron Fist comics. I thought they were fun. I just think that he's a character that probably would have worked in a different universe. He probably doesn't need to be in the same universe as all the other characters. Um, Luke Cage character was very very good heart. If you read like the first two issues of Luke Cage, it's very good. Um, the guy is framed for, I think it was a murder that he didn't commit, and while he's locked away, his best friend is trying to mac on his wife, girlfriend, or whatever. Ends up killing her either by accident or on purpose, however that worked out. While he's in jail, he's been experimented on, and then they mistakenly give him powers, and he breaks out of jail. And all he wants to do is get revenge. And that was the problem, is they created a story where it was all about him getting revenge. And then the metaphysical element of it became a police chase. It started taking on the Black Panthers, Joanne Chesimard, Ashanti, not Ashanti, but Shada Secure kind of thing, where it became a prison break, where once he goes, finds Diamondback and kills him, he starts basically running from the police, even though he can't be killed, which is very strange. Like, this guy who's bulletproof is running from the cops. But it creates a very interesting heartbeat to the story. Like, the guy never should have been in prison in the first place. Now he is. Now, he's been convicted, and now he breaks free. And in breaking free, I think he may have killed somebody in breaking free. I'm not remember how that worked. But I think there was an abusive guard or something like that got their neck broken or something as he was breaking free. But it was a good story. The problem is they wrapped it up in like 2 issues because it shouldn't have been that hard for him to find Diamondback, and it wasn't. So it was logically written, and since he can't be killed, what was going to happen when the guy who can't be shot comes across a guy who does nothing but shoot people? Like, it was simple from there. One of my favorite stories, and it's a character that people don't talk about, is Brother Voodoo, or Dr. Voodoo. It's a Marvel Comics character. You know, um, he's a guy who doesn't believe, and he's a Haitian immigrant in the United States. Doesn't really believe in all this voodoo crap. He ends up going back home to see his brother. His brother is killed by a voodoo priest, and his brother, and he tries to get revenge on him. Who is I think the guy's Dambala, the god of serpents or something like that. And he starts kind of following in his brother's footsteps, and now his brother is a specter that he can, because since he's Brother Voodoo, he can talk to the dead, and he can talk to his brother, and it's the two of them, working together, and it's such a fucking cool element. And Brother Voodoo is a very cool fucking character. Why they've never done that much with him? They did make him Sorcerer Supreme for a little while. Then they had Doctor Doom kick his shit in almost immediately. I think by the end of the first issue of his series, Doctor Doom had kicked his shit in and stole his Eye of Agamotto. So how about that? But I based one of my stories off of the brother Voodoo story. It was so good. I think it was written by Len Wein. I think somebody can Google it for me. AJ3 says Captain Marvel, the original, was a DC character. Shazam, yeah. And the Marvel created their own. And then what became of the trademark and why everyone hates the character? Well, Captain Marvel, the original Captain Marvel, got sued into obscurity because he was too similar to Superman. So then he was ended up being called Shazam because that was his power set. He was called Shazam, and he transformed from young Billy Batson to a Superman-like character. So of course he's original Captain Marvel. And then they started calling him Shazam in the comics just to separate him from Marvel Comics. And then there was another character called Captain Marvel that was a Kree hero who uh, who came to Earth. Um, I'm trying to remember. Is this the Captain Marvel that died from cancer? I think because I think that Captain Marvel died from cancer, and then Carol Danvers took the name. She was Ms. Marvel, and then she took the name Captain Marvel, and she became Captain Marvel. But then you also had um, the black chick who was also Captain Marvel in the Avengers comics in the 80s. And everybody forgot about her because, in the 80s and 90s, the Avengers were not that big of a deal. And they had Inhumans on the team. There was a bunch of people on the Avengers team. If you go back and look at those, and nobody cares about any of those characters. So I'm trying to remember what the black chick's name was, but it's not coming to me immediately. Monica Rambeau. So Monica Rambeau was the leader of the Avengers. She was going by the name Captain Marvel, but nobody really cared about her. She kind of floated off into the abyss. And then they gave Carol Danvers the name Captain Marvel, forgetting that there was already a character named Captain Marvel in Marvel Comics. And because there's now two Captain Marvels in Marvel Comics, DC just decided they're going to call Shazam. And even though his name is supposed to be Captain Marvel. William Burnside. Okay, yeah, so he was okay. Yeah. I knew there was a Cold War Cap, the 1940s Captain America. And each one of them had different stories or whatever. And I think he was the Captain America that shot and killed people. I don't think Steve is a shooter and a killer. But I think that when Brubaker wrote Captain America, he gave Steve Rogers a gun, which might have been one of the few times you've ever seen Steve Rogers with a weapon outside of his shield. There's always a question about whether Steve Rogers as a soldier should shoot people. But you never really see people, him gunning people down in the comics. But yeah, for the record, he should. He's a soldier for fuck's sake. In World War II, he should have had a gun. Walker took over as Cap when Steve became Cap Nomad. Okay, so it was John Walker who became Cap when Steve left to do the Nomad thing. All right, I get it now. Which superhero has the best cartoon show? Oh yeah, it's Spider-Man easily. I think Spider-Man went off the rails in season 4. It was trash. The '90s animated series is very good. Batman is very good too, though. I haven't finished it. I watched up to a certain point, but then I just kind of got bored. I think some of the dramatic elements didn't really sit with me when it comes to Batman. You know, I don't know. I liked the noir set though; it was very good. Did I see the Werewolf by Night special? No, but I do have the Werewolf by Night versus Moon Knight one shot they put out. That is a collection of their battles against each other. You didn't ask that question, but I do have that. Captain Marvel, yeah. Carol had cancer. No, Carol was an alcoholic. Marvel had cancer, if I remember correctly. Monica's in the MCU, but her mom is binary. Get out of here. Yeah, Bucky Barnes became Captain because he was supposed to have been dead with Steve when they brought him back as the Winter Soldier. Part of his redemption arc was him being Captain America for a short time. Bucky Barnes is a great character in terms of heartbeat. If you ever read the Winter Soldier by Brubaker, oh my god, superhero comics really peaked at that point because people were really putting effort in. Under the Red Hood and the Winter Soldier are basically the same goddamn story, all right? But they're told with so much heart, and they're so good. And that's why the movie The Winter Soldier is so good. Because people legitimately understood why Steve Rogers did not want to fight Bucky Barnes. Why he wanted to save Bucky. If they'd have done it the way that it was supposed to be done, where Bucky was basically his Robin and not his best friend who was the exact same age, it would have been less gay. But uh, it doesn't matter at that point. It was essentially the same damn story. Okay, um, but if you actually read like Steve Rogers and Bucky, and Steve didn't want the kid. He didn't like the idea of child soldiers, and he didn't want Bucky there anyway. So you kind of get this. So he definitely would be more guilty when something happens to a kid. And I think it was um, Captain America White, with the Jeff Loeb series. It was beautiful. It was basically a story about how Cap feels like he let Bucky down, and now the guilt he feels off of letting his young boy die. You know, um, it was a great story, tremendous. Well, I haven't been able to find it in trade, but it was tremendous. That Spider-Man Blue and Daredevil Yellow, those are some of my favorite comics for the very reason that I've been talking about for the last hour. Tremendous amounts of heart. In fact, the color series, the Marvel color series, is built around that concept. You know, um, it's built around the character's loss. You know, humanizing the character. Spider-Man Blue makes me want to fucking cry. Right, and then at the end of it, I almost literally did cry because Pete is telling all of this great story, and he's writing this letter to Gwen Stacy, and then at the end, Mary Jane, his wife at the time, catches him writing these letters to Gwen Stacy, and she says, "Tell her I miss her too. Tell her I love her too." And I was like, ah, because you would normally think wife would get jealous, thinking about your ex girlfriend, but it's him working through his emotions. You know, it it was such a strong series. Daredevil Yellow was about Karen. This was after what was the Dick Cheese from Clerks who killed Karen in the Daredevil comics, and everybody was very mad, even though it ended up being like a classic Daredevil moment. Um, but Daredevil Yellow was beautiful too. Absolutely fantastic story. Stan Lee hated kid sidekicks, so now when you think of psychics now, the name seems discouraging and demeaning. I don't remember ever reading about what he thought about kid sidekicks. I know he wasn't thrilled about it, but I'm pretty sure they copied it because it was a trend at the time. Batman created a horrible trend of the child sidekick. I hate the child sidekick too, to be quite honest. But they were just copying Sherlock Holmes, for the record. Marvel erasing Spider-Man marriage was stupid. And not only was it stupid, it was harmful. It actively destroyed the character. Like you could keep Peter Parker as is, but you rip the heart out of the character. You know, when you read the Lee and Ditko Spider-Man stuff, he's a little bit harder edged, but it's all about the drama. And Pete just wants to have a girlfriend and a normal life. You know, and various girls come and go, but Mary Jane Watson is the one. You know, and I get it. I get why they ended the marriage because they feel like, okay, Spider-Man is, he's reached his point. You know, he is now sacrificing himself, and his wife is there. It's like, okay, well, if you want to retire Pete, just let him get married and pass the suit to somebody else, and people can be super happy for him. You know, and they didn't. They chose not to do that. They want Spider-Man. They want Pete to be single and miserable and broke forever, and also for somebody else to also be Spider-Man at the same time. It's like you can have what you want, but give everybody else what they want too. If they decided we're gonna do this, we're going to marry off Peter Parker and retire him as Spider-Man, and he's gonna go off into the sunset. and you'll see him occasionally, but he won't be there. And Miles Morales is going to be Spider-Man. I think most people would be happy with that. You know, they'd be like, "Good. At least Peter is married. At least Peter has a relationship. He's got what he was looking for. He can have kids, and that's what everybody liked about the movies, the Enter the Spider-Verse movies, is that Pete becomes happy. He finally gets what he wants. So people are more accepting of Miles because Peter's in a good place. It's not just that you beat the shit out of Peter in order to prop up Miles. It's that you put Peter in a good place. And now Miles is going to take over because Peter is in such a good place that you don't need him anymore. You can put the end on a character, you know? Would you ship MJ and Pete or Gwen Stacy and Pete? Um, I think Mary Jane is perfect. Like I like Gwen Stacy, but she was basically mm, I think her dying was a higher level, like increased the character's value. Like if you read like a lot of the older stuff, she doesn't do a lot in the series, but when she dies, she takes on mythic levels. Like she becomes something else entirely. When she dies because of what she meant to Peter. You know, Kevin Smith. Oh yes, yeah, it was him. The guy who almost had Daredevil throw a baby off a roof. That was a wild story, man. That was also a Mysterio story. Um, Travis Tippins, did you read the entire Invincible comic series? I did not. Invincible came across to me like it was edgelordy. Like every time I look at a panel of Invincible, it's always everybody's covered in blood and guts, or somebody's cussing a lot. And to me, that it's a distraction. Like whenever they try to do the whole blood and guts thing, I come across like there's not much else to it than this. If somebody would have shown me some of the heart of Invincible first, I probably would have been more into it. But I looked at it and was kind of like everybody's all about how they, I was like, it's another Superman analog, but it's supposed to be like a young Superman. I'm like, I don't really care. I don't really care. They're selling this series in almost like a manga like format now. I was thinking about getting them just to read them, but I was like, I don't know, because I tried reading The Boys. Like I had a feeling about The Boys. It started as Garth Ennis, so I already knew what I was walking into. But I was like, everybody likes The Boys. Let's see what it is. And I read the first issue and was like, yeah, I can't. This shit sucks. It's edge lordy. It's stupid. I can't stand it. Preacher was kind of edge lordy too. I ended up finishing Preacher. It ended up being pretty good, but it was very edge lordy too. But no, I have not read all of Invincible. Will I read Invincible one day? I don't know. Depending on the format, and if I think at this point, I think I'd rather just watch the animated series and call it a day. I don't think I need to read the books. Um, okay, that's why I want to talk about this too. Um, Spawn. They put out a new book, King Spawn. I think it was 24 or 25, where they talk about Spawn. Like the Spawn comics are splintered into 3 or 4 comics. There's the Scorched, which I just dropped because I don't care about the Scorched. Then there's King Spawn, Spawn, and Gunslinger Spawn. I don't read Spawn because it's a different Spawn. It's not Al. I dropped the Scorched. Even though I wanted to follow She Spawn for a little bit, I just kind of got bored because there's a bunch of other characters in it I don't care for. But King Spawn is the Al Simmons Spawn book, and Gunslinger Spawn. These 2 books fucking rule. And they rule for the same reason. King Spawn is about there being a throne of hell that Spawn is supposed to occupy. And all the Spawn books were basically about these various groups trying to either take over the throne for themselves or coerce Spawn into becoming the king of hell or whatever the case may be. But now, of course, Wanda is dead, Spawn's wife, and he sees an opportunity to bring her back. And he goes into hell to find the throne, because once he sits upon the throne, he can find Wanda and bring her back. And in this specific issue, we basically get the entire life story of Al Simmons, which they've told 100,000. Spawn's been going on almost incessantly since like 92. All right. So they've told Al Simmons' life story probably 36 times. But in this King Spawn book, it's contextualized, and they even left in some of the elements I thought they would have taken out. So basically, you learn that Al Simmons was the perfect person to be recruited for being a hell spawn because he lived a life of rage and anger and violence. And of course, they blamed his father, who was abusive to him, abusive to his mother. And Al was, internalized that violence, ran away from home, was a knucklehead, got into it with people in the street. Of course, because, McFarlane is a leftist. We started getting, he was harassed by the police officers, that kind of stuff. But then you learn that Wanda was his saving grace, and she brought out a different side of him. He was a nicer, calmer guy, but he couldn't, he couldn't restrain the rage within him for much longer. He started abusing Wanda. This is something that I actively know people stopped reading Spawn, so they didn't know that was injected into the story, that Al was abusive to Wanda. And I thought, okay, they're not gonna bring that back up. It was I don't know when they dropped that in the story. It was decades ago. But I figured they was just gonna. There's 100 things that have been in Spawn that they don't bring up anymore. But they kept that in there, and they contextualized it as he is a character that is based off of violence and rage, and that he's a monster already. He was a monster when he was human, So of course it makes sense for him to be a perfect monster after he died. And I said, you know what? That was very well done. It shows you that Wanda is still the heartbeat, but Al was never perfect, And in some ways, you actually don't feel so bad that Wanda moved on. Like in a lot of the Spawn material, especially that the HBO movie, HBO cartoon series. My goodness, you think Spawn was like a super cuck, Wanda, like his wife is being banged by his best friend. He's like standing out in the rain, super sad. But knowing that Al was abusive to Wanda, it kind of lightens it a little bit. You're like, oh, this wasn't so bad. He was not kicking her ass anymore, But you get that he was trying to be a better person. He was trying, but it was in his nature to be a violent idiot. And Hell decided they were going to use that. They used his rage, his vengeance against him to trap him into this deal. They got him to be the Hell Spawn. And, now he's going to try to use that power to bring Wanda back, even though he shouldn't. But that's what I mean by a heartbeat. It makes sense. Al is willing to risk everything to bring back Wanda, no matter how many characters tell him he shouldn't do it. No matter how many times people tell him, stop doing that. You shouldn't be trying to bring Wanda back. You're dead. She's moved on. Leave her alone. He can't. Like it's literally, even though he's not alive anymore, that's his literal beating heart. Is trying to find a way to get back to Wanda. It's never going to happen. Like that's the sad part of the Spawn story. It can never happen. It just can't happen. He's dead. Now she's dead too, but he was he was dead. There's nothing you could do about it. Um, the Deadpool movie did a great job of that too. Um, I remember my girlfriend actually cried while we was in the theater watching Deadpool because once he had the cancer all over his body, and he's like, I can't let her see me like this, and he started wearing the uniform all the time. She like broke down and started crying because underneath all of the action and the jokes was Deadpool being insecure about how he looked. And he was worried that his girlfriend wouldn't accept him how he looked. And people can understand that. It's a human emotion. It's perfect. AJ3, I never understood why they never made Betty Ross She-Hulk instead of Jennifer. I'm guessing you mean Jennifer, not Watson. It's Jennifer Water? No, whatever. I don't know what it is. She was trash. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why we needed that. Well, I know why we needed to have a She-Hulk because Stan Lee thought that they were gonna that Universal was gonna make their own She-Hulk, and so he did it first. But Betty Ross is supposed to be the one who can calm down the Hulk. You know, she's his guiding light. She is the heartbeat of the Hulk stories. You know, she doesn't turning her into the Hulk. He just basically made fucking Shrek at that point. She's a Hulk. He's a Hulk. They can fuck. No, that's gross. But but Jennifer, they can. There was really not much thought into that idea outside of that. Outside of we just need to make the character. It'd been nice. What's up, James Earl Cash, Virgo Rebel Penguin? Hey, how you doing? Yeah, Betty is Red She Hulk, and her dad is actually Red Hulk. I don't like all the multiple colored Hulks though. I'm not a big fan. I think that you're diluting the brand. One character that doesn't necessarily have a lot of heart, and it was fixed. I was watching this probably at work. I was watching. I don't know if you guys know who Patman QC is, but he's the guy who does like the history of video games, and he was doing the history of RoboCop video games, and he rightly noted the similarities between RoboCop and Judge Dredd. And having read a lot of Dredd comics, Judge Dredd doesn't really have an emotional core. Not really. But there's elements of Judge Dredd in RoboCop. The big difference, however, is the amount of heart they threw into RoboCop. How you got to learn who Murphy was before everything got taken away from him, and he was stripped away to being nothing but his brain in a jar. My goodness, RoboCop is so phenomenal. It's such a phenomenal series. And it's not even original because Marvel had a character called Death. Was it? It's not Deathstroke. That's DC. Uh, Deathlock. Deathlock the Terminator. It's essentially the same thing. It was a soldier who was, experimented on. His brain is now in a cyborg. There's been like 3 or 4 Deathlocks. I don't know. The one I read was Michael Collins, I think it was. This was in the 90s, I think. And he was a black man. I think the other one was white. So we're in an interesting time with this, this character. And it was interesting. Cagliostro was also trying to be a father figure to him and share the right. Oh, you're talking about Spawn, yeah. And then they ended up making Cagliostro a villain, which probably for the best. But everybody in Spawn is essentially a fucking villain at this point, bro. I mean, because McFarlane doesn't care about stories, he only cares about making action figures that he can sell. I don't think he puts too much thought into who the heroes are and who the villains are. Like, the angels are villains, and the gunslinger spawn, the angels are villains. They were always villains anyway, for the record. But because I think McFarlane is an atheist, like he doesn't really believe in God. But it's not like as hardcore, nutty atheist as it used to be. But it's basically like Spawn is so full of rage that he can tell both heaven and hell to fuck off, and he's gonna kill Spawn. He's gonna kill the devil, and he's gonna kill God. It's like, all right, edgy, super edgy. Like I can see you saying like we're gonna kill a godlike character, which I still don't agree with, but to kill the Christian God, it's probably not likely. I don't think so. I don't think so. It seems goofy to me. It's almost always like the Christian God. It's never like I'm gonna shoot Allah or anything like that. WG feels I think it stopped with red. Rick is just a blue abomination. But they also have a gray Hulk. Now I know that was the original color of Hulk, that he was originally gray. And then there was some printing things that made Hulk green or whatever, I know. But they also have like a gray version of Hulk. So I was like, I don't know why we need to have a gray Hulk, red Hulk, green Hulk, and then have other Hulk-like characters, like Samson. And there's another one too. No, that's a different character. Cag. Did you hear about the Rippaverse scandal theory? No. I'm not paying none of that stuff any attention because it's people arguing about stuff that really don't got anything to do with anything. I've seen videos calling Eric July a grifter and all this kind of stuff. And I say like, bro, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not digging too far into it because to me it's not really any of my business. If people want to give him money for comics and they think the comics are mid, I don't care. There's a lot of people spending a lot more money for mid comics. I mean, it is what it is. All I know is I'm not buying anymore because I didn't really like Ice and 1 and 2. Still support the guy. I hope he does very well, and I heard he's been doing very well. But I'm not really going to spend any money on it, unless he's just going to spearhead something that might be interesting. Yeah, I guess you could say that. You could say that Grey Hulk is still, Bruce. But I'm not really a big Hulk guy anyway. Like he has elements of being fun, but the Hulk is best when Bruce doesn't want to be the Hulk and is sort of forced into it, and now he just wants to be left alone. Like that's the wonderful thing about the Hulk is that it's a power he doesn't want. Like he hates being the Hulk. He can't stand being the Hulk. Being the Hulk actively ruins his life, literally. And he's many of the stories of him trying to kill himself and all this kind of stuff is kind of crazy. But he's tortured, and mentally fucked. Yeah, Mr. Fix-It, aka the Grey Hulk. What is the heart of Berserk? I haven't read all of Berserk, but I watched the movies and I saw some of the anime. And it seemed that, you start out with, Guts and Griffin, and I forget the girl's name, and they were friends. And then Griffin sacrifices everybody for the sake of power, including raping the girl right in front of Guts. And then it becomes a revenge story. And then it just seems to go on from there. But I wish I would have read more. Kind of wish I would have read more of it. But at the same time, I'm glad I didn't because there's not going to be an end to it. I don't know how they're still putting out Berserk. I think the guy's been dead for 2 or 3 years now, and there's still Berserk volumes coming out. Either he finished those before, or he got somebody else to take notes and do that. But I'm always fishy of guys continuing other people's stories. Like when Ian Fleming died and other people started writing James Bond stories, like other people writing Conan the Barbarian stories. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know about that. And I think about like if I was to die, somebody would do that too. You know, I don't know. If it was somebody who, like, if I was like a really old guy and I like trained somebody to like, okay, if something was to happen to me, here's my notes, here's my outlines, you just fill in the blanks, then maybe. But if like the publisher goes out and finds some guy and says, "Hey, we want you to write Conan the Barbarian books," that sucks. If you know the author, like the kid who finished his dad's Dunes books, like he kept writing them, you could say, okay, maybe he has some kind of intimate knowledge of the Doom universe, not Doom, Dune universe, who, maybe his dad showed him some notes or something like that. All right. But like complete total fucking stranger. Hey, here, come write this. At that point, man, you basically it's Star Trek at that point, bro. Like it's a franchise. It don't even matter anymore. And that's when stuff starts losing the heart. When other people start touching it, because then they eventually forget what it's all about. And this is where you start getting something like Star Trek, where Star Trek had an idea when it was created, what it was meant to do, what it was meant to convey. And then when they did the movies, the most recent Star Trek movies, they were basically space, adventure movies. That's not what Star Trek is. Star Trek is not Star Wars. It's not, all space battles and shit. It's mostly sociology in space. That's mostly what it is. You find a new uh, type of person, an alien species, and you help them solve some kind of problem. And then, while also keeping with the prime directive of, not directly interfering unless absolutely necessary, which of course they stopped doing that too. Like there's a lot of stuff going on, man. But when something is popular, people want to keep it going. And when people want to keep it going, there's going to be other writers, and other writers are going to have other ideas of what to do with the franchise. And then that's how stuff gets lost in transition. That's why I'm not a big fan of what they're doing with Dragon Ball. Like I'm just very glad that Toriyama is still there, because heavens to Betsy when he's gone, I can't imagine what kind of shit they're going to do with Dragon Ball. My God, I just I just feel it in my bones that as soon as they put Toriyama's ass in the ground, Dragon Ball is going to go off the fucking rails. I feel it. They're not going to stop producing Dragon Ball because Toriyama died. So it's going to go off the rails. And I already know it. I already know it. Because the West loves them some Dragon Ball too much. Are you interested in BentKey subscription video service? I don't even know what that is. I have no idea what that is. Veto 2 is where I got the Eric and Rip reverse scam. I don't know, but like I don't even know who those people are. Like I see them on Twitter arguing with those folks all day because I follow Eric July on Twitter. I see people arguing with this guy all day, but I don't see any legitimate like criticisms or content outside of people who are criticizing his writing. Um, but other than that, I haven't seen anybody say they felt scammed. I saw people who say they didn't like the books, and that's a matter of opinion. You don't like the books, you don't have to buy them. But a scam would be you paid for something and you didn't get it, or you thought that money was going towards one thing, but it's going towards another. I don't know. But then again, I'm not looking into it because I typically one of the big reasons why Comicsgate became so boring is it became soon as somebody started selling some stuff, other people became competition and it became dog eat dog. Guys started arguing with each other, especially as soon as somebody got, popular or whatever. It's time to start tearing them down. Time to attack them. Time to rip them apart. And it doesn't do you any good. But I've supported quite a few guys because I thought, they had good ideas, or at least just to see how far it could go, or just basic curiosity. And I don't have no problem doing that, but I've supported twice, and I think like twice is enough unless something changes. Um, WG Fields says, I'd hope Toriyama end this series when he's alive. Right? Here's the thing. Toriyama's already ended the series. It's everybody else that's keeping it alive. It's I'm pretty sure Toriyama will be perfectly happy if nobody ever made him draw Goku ever again. But it's they won't leave him alone. He tries to do other stuff and just attach it to Dragon Ball because he wants to do other things. So he tried to do was a space police kid that ended up throwing in Dragon Ball Super. Just, they found some way to tie him in to Dragon Ball because like nobody's gonna read this shit on his own. Dr. Slump, they end up tying that into Dragon Ball. It's like, yeah, it won't be long before like what was that? What's the new one? Sandland or whatever it's called. They end up tying that one into Dragon Ball eventually too. Like that guy's trying to, like he's a prisoner of his own success at this point. There's not much he can do except, every day draw Vegeta, draw Goku. He's probably like, as long as I'm getting paid, okay. But god damn it. I knew when Torotaro was doing it, it was pretty much over. Have I tried Indiegogo? I order stuff from Indiegogo. Like if I ever tried doing my own, look, I've had ideas about different things. I don't know how to write a comic book script, and it's different. When I first started writing novels, I actually based it off of screenwriting. I had no idea that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing with like dialogue bubbles and scene setting and stuff like that. And basically, apparently, from the comic book scripts I've seen, that's how comic book scripts are supposed to be put together. But I don't know if I love comics enough. And I know I do. I love comic books. I don't know if I love it enough to invest all the money necessary into a comic book series. I don't know. So I really try to lean more towards novels and maybe having like really cool covers. Or, if somebody wants to like buy a story from me and turn it into a comic book, you can do that. As long as you credit me as the original creator and I get like a hefty percentage. That's not bad. I'm not evil. you know, and I remember when it was a big thing. I was on college campuses and I was going through, and people would talk about like, oh, Glenn Beck didn't write his own book. He had a ghostwriter. And I'm like, well, didn't 90% of these motherfuckers have ghostwriters? Because I think there was some book that went out that Glenn Beck supposedly wrote that became like a #1 bestseller. And then they found out later that somebody else wrote it. He just bought the guy. He bought the book and threw his name on it. And I was like, sounds like something Glenn Beck would do. Sounds like something most of these guys would do. It was a nonfiction book. That's why I mentioned it. I forget what it's called, but there's another version. There's a book by I think it was called. It was named after something from one of the founding fathers. I forget what it was, but it was like some kind of book that he had written. Dr. Slump was supposed to be tied to Dragon Ball either, and here it is. They won't stop doing it. But I get it. Toriyama is just trying to do stuff, and people keep telling him to draw Goku. So here it is. WG feels that the scam peddled by Dick and Vito is that he donated books to a charity where he charged $13.99 instead of $17.99. When it's because the charity ordered item in bulk. Oh, that's the scam. that's the scam. Who got scammed? That's what I want to know. Did the charity get scammed? Did he get scammed? Who got scammed? If he gave the charities a discount, that's a good thing. Even if they ordered in bulk, It's still a good thing. It was for charity. I don't look. That's why I don't get involved with this stuff. It's guys who don't like him anyway, reaching for reasons to not like him. But yeah, I mean, the heart of a story is what keeps people coming back to it. Is and then it's also the part of the story that people, um, when they revisit it, what they remember about it. Like I don't watch this stupid TV show, but I saw some guy was on Twitter. He was rewatching um, Insecure, the television show. I think it was HBO TV show or whatever. And he was basically going through remembering all the things that happened on the show, and and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, despite the fact that I don't really like that show, and I knew I wasn't gonna like it when I heard who wrote it and what it's about and all this kind of stuff. It's not for me. But that stuff is built on heart. It's a dramatic show. Dramas are built on heart. You can't have a drama without heart. It just doesn't work. You need to have romance. You need to have characters caring about something, searching for something, looking for something, attaining something and losing it. And you get to revisit those stories again and again. And when you get to chapter 6, you look back at chapter 1 and like, oh, that's why he did this, or that's why he did that, or this is why this makes sense, or oh, he better not do this. And I try to do that in my stories. Is always have that through line there, because your characters need to make mistakes, you know. Because in real life, part of what people tell you to do is to follow your heart, and without realizing it, sometimes your heart will lead you down what they call the primrose path, and you'll end up in danger. And it's so to me, that's always the best way to test your characters and to give them flaws is to make them emotional. And so they make emotional decisions, mistakes. And then they can spend the time trying to redeem a certain amount of time trying to redeem themselves in the story to show that they're not perfect and that they made that mistake, but they made it was an honest mistake, you know? So I love doing that. Blue Dragon almost looked like Dragon Ball, but or a Lord of the Rings twist. What is that? I've never heard of that. My dog, Ricky Cornflakes, for real, for real. WG Phil, if you were in charge of a live Dragon Ball action, what arc would you want to adapt? And what changes would you make to make it fit in 10 to 20 episodes? Uh, it would definitely be one of the tournaments. Definitely. It would definitely be probably the first tournament. And I would just shave it to basically Master Roshi and, Wabuma finds this kid and she got most of the Dragon Balls already. And then maybe the guy who wins the tournament gets a Dragon Ball, just to make it interesting. In finding Dragon Balls, Goku is recruited by Master Roshi, who trains him, and then they decide to get into this tournament to combat for this Dragon Ball. And then you get, of course, Jackie Chun in the thing, and I would twist it a little bit to bring the Crane School in, and for oh shit, what's the name to also be in the tournament, but he would have like some guys in the tournament, of course, um, so that everybody can fight for the Dragon Ball. But the story would be the same, where Jackie Chun is in the tournament to stop Goku from winning, in order to teach him about, there's always someone stronger, there's always something better. But also, you could put the Dragon Ball element in there with the villains and everything, who are trying to rule the world, and that could just be something fun that you put in there. But I would definitely go with the first arc of Dragon Ball in the first tournament. I will find some way to mash those two things together. I mean, yeah, but that's the thing. You could put Yamcha in there. You could put Krillin in there. You can, you can put Chi Chi in there because most of the characters that are in the first tournament are not characters that you're ever going to see again. So you can put like the Red Ribbon Army in there. Like everybody can have a representative in the tournament. Like you can have the Crane School, the Turtle School, the Red Ribbon Army. All these different groups that want that Dragon Ball, and they're all going to fight for it. Their best soldiers are going to fight for it, and even have at some point in time the tournament break down, and guys just try to steal it or whatever the case may be. Did you see the Dragon Ball? No, I didn't watch that stupid movie. Why would I watch that movie? Like, why would I watch that movie? I would not watch. I never would have watched that movie. There was nothing about that movie that was appealing. There was nothing about that movie, if you just saw even the still pictures, that would make you want to see it if you was a Dragon Ball fan. So anybody who sat down and wasted, I would imagine 2 hours of their lives watching it, you're a buffoon. You could just look at what they did and tell that it wasn't going to be any good. Dragon Ball is probably not something that, look, it's already hard to do with anime because of the crazy hair and all that kind of stuff. But it was going to virtually be impossible to do a Dragon Ball live action movie. It's just too much fantastical shit in Dragon Ball, man. It was so bad. Toriyama was like, "No, I'll go back. I'll go back to drawing shit." Well, thankfully it was made because we got Super, you know. But while we're on the subject, just a little divergence from the topic of today. Did you see the Yu Yu Hakusho trailer, and what do you think about it? I'll give my thoughts on it if people actually say that they saw it, because I do have thoughts about the Yu Yu Hakusho trailer. I got a lot of thoughts about it, especially when I saw what they were trying to do. I just shook my head. That's actually what part of what my idea came from for the Dragon Ball pitch that I was just gave. Because I felt like it was going too far when it comes to Yu Yu Hakusho. Oh boy, I'm not gonna say it was trash. I'm not gonna say it was trash. It wasn't trash. It just looked mid, high level mid. It looked mid. I like Toguro. You know, Toguro looked great. Well, the base form Toguro, he looked great. I didn't really get to see Kurama and Hiei. Everybody was pissed about Kuwabara not having his hair, which is one of the more defining characteristics of the character. His big pompadour, which the point him well Yusuke is supposed to have a pompadour too, but not like it's not as big as Kuwabara's. Um, it didn't look terrible, you know. It just I wasn't sure what they were going to adapt, and looking at Yu Yu Hakusho, and I was like, oh, so they just decided they're gonna do Dark Tournament, and that's it. Like I probably would have gone with Four Saint Beast personally, you know, but okay, they just gonna do Dark Tournament because they wanted to show Toguro. I'm like, I probably would have done that second movie, maybe third. Toguro for most people is like the end of the series. It's hard to get people talking about Yu Yu Hakusho after the Dark Tournament, which I think it was still good after the Dark Tournament. But Dark Tournament, of course, is the high point. But that's also why I felt like you shouldn't do that first. Like you should tell the story of Yusuke actually doing investigations before he just became a random fight guy. And the Four Saint Beasts, him going into this castle to fight these magical monsters or whatever. And that's literally like an investigation. Him and his cohorts go in there. That's actually fun. I like the Four Saint Beast arc. you know. But look, Bowie looked great in the live action movie. Bowie was one of my favorite characters on Yu Yu Hakusho. He's a 9 foot knight. That's just badass, bro. You know, he's just badass. I didn't watch the Full Metal Alchemist live action movie. I never saw it. Um, I've been meaning to watch it, but I didn't. I meant to watch it when I watched Devilman, which was so bad. Oh my god, it wasn't as it was bad, but it wasn't. It was terrible. Yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible. But I never seen Full Metal Alchemist. I don't see a highly well. At least the characters look more human in Full Metal Alchemist. You know, so I don't know. But what you can tell is that they end up having real problems, even in Japan, adapting manga into live action movies because they whiffed it with Death Note, and Death Note should have been fairly fucking easy. You know, they whiffed it with Death Note in Japan, or not just what they did in America, but it wasn't that great in Japan either. Um, so they even have a hard time making these movies. WG Field says Kuwabara and Yusuke were part of a rockabilly subculture. The Pompadour should have stayed, but they want to K-pop it. I don't know why. Like, it is a part of the culture of the time, and you're adapting the culture of the time, and that's really supposed to be. I guess they wanted to update it, but they're gangbangers. Like they're supposed to look different. You know, you're not supposed to look like just edgy, angry kids. They're supposed to have a very specific look to them, so that other kids will know that they're not to be fucked with. I don't know why they decided to do it the way they did it, but that alone got a lot of people saying they're not going to watch it because you know of what they did with the hairstyles. But I saw it and I was like, it was alright. you know, I just want to know, like, because I know they really wanted to focus on Tagoro and all that, and I was like, okay, whatever. We're just going to jump right to the dark tournament. Okay, whatever. And it seems like they're going to probably mix one or two of the arcs together in the dark tournament. Whatever. I'm not tripping. It doesn't look. I'm not excited about it because it's Netflix, and Netflix have ruined pretty much everything that I've seen them do so far. I heard they really botched Knights of the Zodiac. I didn't watch that, but I heard they fucked that one up something good too. Uh, but I'm not surprised they did because Saint Seiya, Knights of the Zodiac, it's not a super well known property. They didn't put the tender love and care in there. But some of the One Piece fandom like the One Piece adaptation, you know. So maybe the Yu Yu Hakusho fandom will like this version of the movie. I don't know. I think the Yu Yu Hakusho fandom is they're trying not to die out. One Piece live action is more of the easier, basically. I guess you mean Pirates of the Caribbean. Uh, the actors seem to be fans of the series, from what I understand too. So that probably made things a little bit easier. It looked like everybody who was actually working on the property actually at least read some of the manga. At least read some of the manga. I mean, there's like 1,000 volumes. I don't expect everybody to read all of it, but you have to become familiar with the characters at least. But that's always going to end up being a problem. Is you try to get people to do character research, and there's 900 pieces of fiction for them to fucking read. That's impossible, bro. Like that's why the heart line has to work. You got to have a reason for this stuff to happen, and if that's there, then most people will clutch on and be okay. But you gotta get the heart line there, and that's one thing that I missed in the Yu Yu Hakusho trailer is, you know, part of Yusuke's story is his human girlfriend. She's his link to the human world. You know, She is the reason he was brought back from death. Her kiss brought him back from death. You gotta put that in there. That needs to be a part of the story. That was a bit of a Snow White situation right there. That was nice. So you basically had to bring that back in there. But I didn't see that. I didn't see her in it at all. So I was like, okay, they're trying to go with everything's cool about Yu Yu Hakusho, rather than going into the heartbeat of the show. But that's really what made the Dark Tournament so good. Again, it was a tournament with a heartbeat. Genkai and Toguro had a relationship. What they had was meaningful. The rivalry had meaning to it. It was important. I didn't see Genkai in there at all either. So, I don't know. Maybe they make a Yu Yu Hakusho 2 when Genkai is in there. Because how do Yusuke have powers without Genkai? I know he had the spirit gun without Genkai, but there's got to be something. Do you think Asian people play anime characters better in movies than other races? I think it fits more. Like, I wouldn't want like a Korean Spider-Man. So I'm not tripping on guys who are like, but if you're going to adapt something for America, if you want to chop it up, mince it, and remix it, and then do something different, okay. Like, I think Americans could get away with like Full Metal Alchemist because of Ed and Al being blonde haired and blue eyed. They're essentially European, so you can get away with Vinland Saga, Full Metal Alchemist, and a couple of other shows with them being Americans or Europeans or whatever. You can pretty much get away with it. They don't have to be Asian. In fact, it's actively weird if they are Asian, and the Japanese are not, upset about, Americans doing their own thing or, whatever. But you don't want like a African Thor. That's stupid. Like, what would be the point of that? But yeah, I think it depends on the property. Like, they didn't have an Asian girl play Alita, but Alita is a robot. She's a cyborg. They basically CGI'd the face, and all the old girl had to do was basically be a personality, and it worked out. So it is what it is. And you know what? Interestingly enough, I've never seen the Ghost in the Shell movie, not the animated movie. Of course, I've seen that. I've never seen the Scarlett Johansson Ghost in the Shell. But I'm reading the manga now. That's one of the things I got from Yumacon is I finally got Ghost in the Shell. So I got it hardcover too. It's probably gonna take me forever to read it because there's all kinds of liner notes and stuff in it. But just reading what I've read so far in Ghost in the Shell, that character does not exist in that animated movie. The Major Kurosagi in the manga, almost completely fucking different character than the one in the anime. Basically a different fucking character. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Yeah, Attack on Titan could probably get away with being Europeans too, because a lot of those characters are flat out white. So it is what it is. And yes, they are based on Europe. So you can get away with an Americanized Attack on Titan. And I think we could do a good job of an Attack on Titan story. It's not going to be what everybody else wants it to be. But I think that we could do a good one. It's a kaiju movie, though. That's all it is. Do you know why Gohan isn't in the new Dragon show? He's not in it? I assumed everybody was in it. Why would Gohan not be in it? Unless they got a good reason why Gohan wouldn't be in it. I would assume everybody's in it. So I wouldn't see why he wouldn't be. Unless Gohan is going to be the one person who stays as an adult for a given reason. In which case, if you're going to have him, they should have kept Trunks and Goten as adults. But apparently, they're going to get turned into babies. Trunks and Goten. Um, so everybody else gonna get turned into a kid, and they're gonna get turned into babies. So at least that's what I think. I think that's what somebody said. I haven't seen like the video or anything like that. I hope that's not the case. I hope they aren't turned into babies. But then again, I don't want everybody to be the same age either. I don't want everybody to be like a 10-year-old. It would be nice if like certain people were turned younger than others. That'd be a good way of writing them out the story, so you don't have to worry about them as you turn some of them into babies. I also got from Umacon 2 Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips books. They're from their Reckless series, Friend of the Devil and Destroy All Monsters. I also went and picked up. I had not gone to the comic book shop in 3 weeks. I picked up Hellsing. There's a new edition of Hellsing. I got the first volume, Candy and Cigarette 6, and I think this is the second or third Marvel Masterworks on the Fantastic Four. I got from Umacon some of the James Bond comic strips. I got The Man with the Golden Gun graphic novel, The Paradise Plot, and Sharkbait graphic novels. I also have 4 of the I don't know how many hardcovers of Parasite. I have not opened that. I haven't even cracked that yet. That's my when I run out of stuff to read, I'll read that. Same thing with Attack on Titan, which I still have not opened. I do not watch Marvel series anymore. I'm done with Marvel. Marvel can do whatever they want. Not watching it. Not a big fan of. Look, Loki could be a fun character too. They did a really good Loki series a couple years ago, where he was trying to redeem himself, and he was turned into a kid or something like that. It was an interesting series, but then I think they did Vote Loki when he was running for president, which was fucking hilarious. Like it's humorous that he would run for president. What should happen to Bullard, considering she's a toddler? Would that keep her as a baby? Bulma is pregnant as a teen, or does she just cease to exist? That's the question that I'm sitting here thinking of too. Because if you turn Trunks and Goten into babies, she's already a baby. So what do you do? What do you do with her? You turn into a zygote? Does she vanish from the face of the earth? Like what happens? But I guess we'll have to watch and see. Because I would imagine to avoid that, everybody would end up being the same age, which doesn't do anybody any good. It kind of sucks, actually. I heard that Tom Middleton is a really good Loki. I mean, he's really good, and Loki is a good character. All the crazy woke shit actually works with Loki. He turns himself into a woman. He has sex with strange creatures. You know, and this is just part of the canon of the character. With him being bisexual and his ability to change his own gender, because he does that stuff all the time. He also has sex with animals. So if you want to be correct. He's not just bisexual. He's also a beast. He has sex with something. And he has wolf babies. Like, come on. But at least it makes sense in that respect. All right, I gotta use the bathroom, y'all. So you're gonna wrap this thing up. So if all of you writers out there, hopefully you guys consider, um, not just the world that your characters live in, but what is your character's flaw? What are they looking for? What are they missing? What do they need? What is the other characters doing for them? You know, if they're part of a party, a big group of people, they have to serve some purpose. The other characters have to serve a purpose. And to go back to Cowboy Bebop to clean this up, Ed found a sister in Faye, a big sister, a role model, if you will. And they had an interesting relationship between the two of them. and she had a father figure in Jet, who was a significantly older man, and she had a bigger brother in Spike. You know, so she found the family that she was looking for, but she also ended up finding her real father. So that was one of my favorite parts of the series, if we're being honest. But when you write a story, having those kind of character beats actually help you keep the characters in line, and it helps you write them. You know, what would you rather have out of three powers? Ben 10, watch, lantern ring, or iron suit? Well, a lantern ring, because if you can create anything with a lantern ring, and it's as powerful as your will is. So, yeah, I would go with that. Ben 10, I would need like the DNA of an alien or something like that, right? All right, let me go to the bathroom. Good night, y'all. I appreciate you stopping by, and I'll talk to you guys later.